Okay, welcome to the first Go-To Lab session for week two. This session is mostly going to cover the main topics we'll be covering this week, which I'll deal with how to tell fact from fiction online, or what I like to call how to determine if things are actually credible. Part of digital literacy means being aware of the online environment. And although lots of us know some of the basics about, especially when you're a teen, like stranger danger, there could be dangerous people lurking out there. Most of us know about phishing scams or not to open suspicious email. I do think that the issue is a little bit broader than that. And since some of the stuff that we talked about during week one, namely that we're entering a realm, if we haven't already for a number of years, that really we spend sometimes as much as half of our lives, or for some of you who are truly addicted, more than half of our lives dealing with some sort of online form of communication, whether it's social media, whether it's Facebook, well, that's social media, but whether it's email, whether it's using the FSO platform, whether it's using a go-to meeting piece of software, whether it's communicating via FaceTime or Skype or what have you. We're so plugged in so much of the time that I think it's important to kind of talk about these issues of just credibility in general. So here's kind of the schedule for today. I do want to talk about credibility in general, also reminding people of what they need to do this week, and how specifically we try to determine what's credible and what's not. And then, yeah, I do want to spend some time talking about this week's. Every week there are pretty much typically two graded assignments. One is usually in the form of a discussion that's worth a few less points than other things. They're typically 5% of your grade. And then there's a bigger assignment that's typically due on a Sunday, or because we started late, your first major assignment was actually due Monday. Those are usually worth 15%, 20%. And as usual, the first part of this session, the first session for the week, I'll concentrate more on the smaller stuff, and then Thursday's session will concentrate on the bigger assignment. By the way, I just had to change the time for Thursday's go-to meeting. It will start an hour earlier. I know it was scheduled for 4, which is what time it is Eastern right now, but on Thursday I actually had to move it to 3 o'clock Eastern. I believe you'll be sent some sort of reminder. If not, I'll send a reminder announcement through FSO. But just get in your mind that Thursday we're meeting at 3 p.m. I completely forgot that I have an online version of this well, not this class, actually, it's a completely different class that meets on campus, and it literally meets on a different day every week. So week one we met on a Saturday, which is a lot of fun. There are other weeks it meets on a Tuesday, and I had completely forgotten that this Thursday it meets at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So there's really no way for me to show up for a 4 p.m. session, finish it, and get to the classroom by 5. So we're going to start an hour earlier on Thursday. And in that session, we'll go over the next major assignment that's due Sunday, which is related to this issue of credibility. So just keep that in mind. By the way, in addition to the graded discussion for this week, which is a team-based discussion. I know a lot of people are curious to hear about that because you probably saw the announcement where you were put into one of three teams, Team A, Team B, or Team C. And some of you may have read through the basic instructions, but others you might still be confused, or maybe you didn't read through the instructions. So I will talk about that assignment, so don't panic. But even if I sound like a broken record, it never hurts to repeat certain things. Let's see. Where do I have it open? I'll just open it up again. Don't forget that, like I mentioned last week, that there are ungraded activities, ungraded discussions, but it doesn't mean you get to skip them. I mean, you can skip them, and overall, it doesn't hurt your final grade in any major way because they're ungraded. But you do lose professionalism points at the end of the month when I see that you didn't participate in the discussion. So these things like how to separate fact and fiction online, you can see 5 people have already jumped in and started discussing. There's another one, evaluating resources, which I'm going to go into in just a second. I mean, they're both worth 0%, but that doesn't mean you can ignore them. Or you can ignore them. I'm not encouraging that, but I don't know. If life is crazy and you decide, you know what, I'll lose the 5 professionalism points at the end of the month. That's 5% out of 100, by the way, not 5% of your overall grade. Um, I got distracted by something someone said in the chat. Yeah, you lose 5 professionalism points, and if things are crazy and you skip a discussion for the week, I mean it happens, and you should comfort yourself by knowing that, hey, It's 0% of your overall course grade. But I encourage people to try to complete as much as possible. Someone said that they don't know which team they're on. Don't worry, Tony. I'll show that in just a second. Actually, in a few seconds, I'll get into it in the second half of this presentation. But you've all been put into groups, and I'll explain what you need to know, how you should contact your team members, how you should get going on it. But I do want to begin with sort of the big picture stuff because if I say that for later in the session, then I have a greater chance of losing you. Um, okay, so evaluating resources is one I want to highlight because even though it's worth 0% of your grade, there are actually steps you have to do more than just jump in and post to the discussion board. So I thought I'd show that. And I believe I have it open. Okay, so first, when you go into the activity, you'll be encouraged to click on this link that takes you to a reading. Um, that's all about the different things you should keep in mind when determining whether something you read online is credible or not. And it breaks it down into 10 to 10 categories, all of which begin with the letter C. That's why it's called 10 C's. So content, credibility, critical thinking, copyright, citation, and so on. So your job is to go online and find an article and apply these categories, and you get descriptions of each category to help you. So content asks you basic questions like, what is the intent of the content? Is the author identified? You won't be able to answer every single question, nor do I expect you to go through every single question for every single item. Remember, this is an ungraded discussion, so I realize that you have lives and you don't want to spend 10 hours on this assignment. But you should read through the questions, get the gist of it, and deliver a response, which I've already done on the discussion board. I've modeled an example. I just went to CNN and found an article and broke it down in terms of the 10 C's. Okay? So that's what you're going to do. So if you want to use my example as a model, you should do so. Don't just look at mine and start trying to copy. I mean, make sure that you're using the article. You might have completely different opinions. You might even have different ways of viewing what these things mean, these descriptions describe, than how I've taken them. But I have kind of modeled an example. I've modeled an example for you to sort of look at. And actually, you don't have to do this, but I actually sort of encourage not to purposely go out and find garbage, but like I went to CNN, and I know we haven't gotten into credibility, the discussion of it yet, but like on a scale of 1 to 10, where does CNN fall on your level of trust? Like, is it a complete 1, like it's garbage, you don't trust it at all? Is it a 10? Is it like rock solid information that you would feel comfortable citing? Is it somewhere in between? Okay, Tony gives it a 10. Anybody else want to weigh in? This also helps me before we get into the discussion to sort of gauge where people. Jordan gives it an 8. Okay. 8. Anybody else? Lots of 8s. Yeah, I don't know. I'd probably give it like, I don't know, 7-ish maybe. It's sort of odd. You've probably all seen CNN on television because that's how it started as a 24/7 news channel. It was the first of its kind back in the early 80s. And basically all the other channels that we have now, whether it's Fox News or MSNBC, even though they might not literally be 24/7, they're pretty darn close. So they're basically kind of following that model. And the website is basically just literally the web presence of the cable channel. So lots of times with the information, what you'll get on CNN.com matches what you would see if you turned on the television. I do think it's fairly trustworthy. It's just not very in depth. It's sort of vanilla journalism. In the old days, when people still read print newspapers, I cannot remember the last time I picked up a print newspaper because it just seems so archaic, even though I've read newspapers all my life. Back in the day, there was a publication, it still exists, USA Today. Like, that's sort of CNN-ish. It's not that it's bad information or untrustworthy. It's just not the most rigorous journalism in the world. It's designed to sort of give you the straightforward facts and not much more. Um, but in terms of like issues we'll get into a second about bias and things like that, it's pretty free of bias. You get some crazy people who swear it's liberally biased. You get crazy people who say it's conservatively biased, but it pretty much tries to stay somewhere in between. If there's any bias, I would say it's commercially biased, because if you've ever been to CNN.com, there are ads, and clearly the stories are on there to get your attention, right? Because when you click on a story, it then generates revenue. So maybe in that sense, there's a kind of moderate sort of bias, but It's not like it doesn't have a clear political agenda or any other obvious agenda. So yeah, 7-ish, I'd say. You guys are kind. I've heard people give it like 3, 2. Okay, so let's get back because I've actually gotten a bit ahead of myself, and let's talk about credibility. So another discussion you're supposed to participate in is this TED Talk video. You have about 4 TED Talk videos to watch. I love these videos. I really do because I think we've done a good job finding interesting videos on interesting topics. They're not terribly long. They usually run between 10 and 15 minutes. And they're really nice because they're sort of bite-sized little seminars that give you a glimpse into where we are today. And this video, by the way, has anybody here watched it already? I mean, the discussion's pretty much open throughout the week, so if people haven't jumped in already, it's not a big issue. But the video is waiting there for you to watch. I mean, I won't give away spoilers, but it does generally talk about how you can trust information. Because one of the things that Markham Nolan, who is the presenter in this video, talks about is just how much the dissemination, which basically is a fancy word for distribution of information, has changed. I mean, even 20, 25 years ago, I mean, the spread of information was very much handled by gatekeepers, right? You had journalists who did stories, you had news outlets who spread the stories, and we as consumers would then digest that information. But we couldn't really do much to contribute to that. Now, of course, that's completely changed because everybody's walking around with a smartphone. Everybody, all smartphones come equipped with cameras nowadays that can not only take photos but can record video as well. People can leave feedback in 2 seconds. People can report on things as they're happening. And this didn't happen 25 years ago. 25 years ago, you were lucky enough if some tourist just happened to have a video camera, which back in the day would have been this, football size thing, maybe even a little bit larger. You might have gotten lucky and a tourist might have caught an image of a tornado or something like that. But now, of course, I mean, thousands of people, perhaps more, literally every day have information that they come across. And the former gatekeepers, who are still somewhat gatekeepers, have to sort through that information to be able to tell, okay, what's trustworthy, what isn't, what's real, what's fiction. And so this video, which I think is around 15, 16 minutes, does a really good job of giving examples of this, of things that have come in from actual people that people thought, or the people who are in control of delivering the news decided, this is great information. It looks terrific, but we have to verify it because there's another side to that too, right? People who want to pull hoaxes, people who just want attention, people who can fake things using Photoshop, people who can stage things. So the video is really interesting about to what degree people need to go to just verify whether things are true or not, and how all that has changed because of just the huge kind of upheaval we've had in terms of access to technology, which is no longer just in the hands of the gatekeepers, but it's in the hands of you and I as well. So that's what this video is about, and basically you just have to jump in to the discussion board and post your thoughts, your comments. Okay, so how do we determine fact versus fiction or online trust credibility? And so I have a question. Can you think of a time, and you can go ahead and answer in the chat box, can you think of a time where either you could not trust in information that you found online, or perhaps later you found out the information you thought was genuine turned out to be questionable? Can you think of examples where it doesn't have to be like super serious. Tony says Instagram. Okay, so what does that mean? Did someone post something that was fake? Or Kevin says post on Facebook. I mean, I think I generally know what you guys are talking about, though I'd like a little bit more information about what that means exactly. On Facebook, I don't know. I'm skipping past so much of the stuff usually. I do know that it targets you very, very specifically with stories. For example, I always get, and maybe it's an indication that I need to lose some weight, but I always get that ad about, who was it? Dr. Oz or something came up with some controversial weight loss thing, and he got like really drilled on it, but even by like the government because it was considered a scam. So maybe that's an example where if I'd clicked on that and thought it was awesome, that maybe it turned out to be true. Yeah, muscle hats. Yeah, the guy looked like this, and now he looks like this, and it's like some 70-year-old guy who looks totally buff. Yeah, okay, those are pretty bad. Let's see, what about other people have said? Jordan says Yahoo. There's an article that was biased as heck. Yeah, I'd like to hear more about that. You can either type your response in the chat or raise your hand and share with us out loud what that Yahoo article is about. Tony says there are blog posts that are outrageous. Okay, Kevin has a pretty good example of posting that someone is dead and it turns out she wasn't. Yeah, those happen so often, right? Like the news spreads about someone dying and it turns out not to be true. Yeah, Taylor mentions the same thing. Eddie Murphy's dead. You guys must be more zeroed in on Facebook than I am. I guess I'm not looking closely enough. I check to see if friends have posted, and then I'm out of there. Uh, but maybe it has to do with the number of friends. Like you guys, how many friends do some of you have on Facebook? Go ahead, brag. Let it be known. Jordan says it was about sales for a company, saying the company is going to die in a couple months when it was still making money. Okay, good. That's a great example. Facebook friends, Kevin has 117. Taylor has 400. Okay, Jordan's more in my category, even though I'm lower than Jordan. 2,000. Yeah, well, that's actually in a weird way it doesn't connect entirely to this discussion, but it somehow does. Like, how many of those people are truly friends, and how many of them do you really know? I mean, how many of you click on friend invites that you're like, I'll just click on it because it's one more friend, Dad, even though truly you don't know who that person is. Like, I got burned on that the first time I joined Facebook. Someone sent a friend invite. I'm like, sure, I need more friends. And then it just turned out to be, I don't know, either a bot or a scammer or something like that. And I quickly just unfriended. Uh, yeah, I think I have like 54 friends, which is like the lowest total. It's pathetic. But there's a reason behind it. It's because I only accept people that I know, right? I don't accept 700 people because if I don't know 650 of them, for me, okay, I'm not trying to criticize anybody else, but for me, it's kind of not really beneficial. Jordan says 40 friends. I have the rest of people saying they knew me in high school and clearly didn't. Yeah, that happens too. But at least if they were truly classmates, even if they weren't good friends. But I do want to make the connection to credibility here, which is like, how many people are you inviting that you don't know? And why are you accepting these people as friends? And could there be not necessarily nefarious purposes behind what they do, but uh, do you know who these people are? Do you feel comfortable inviting them as friends? Because there's a credibility issue there as well. But here we're talking more about the big picture, like information online, which we've already gotten into in terms of hoaxes and stories that turn out to be true, not to be true, or biased articles. Um, right? And we know examples of bias from television. Like, I don't try to get political because then people get angry, but like we have two stations, MSNBC and Fox, that are pretty much polar opposites, right? I mean, they both have their agendas. Like, one is strongly conservative, the other one's strongly progressive. Like, it's pretty clear that they both have a way of kind of viewing the same information, but coming to completely different results or opinions. So that's an instance in bias. And by the way, bias doesn't always mean bad. Okay, unless we're talking about like a pure science report, it's pretty difficult for human beings to remain completely objective. I think when it comes to news reporting, and by the way, MSNBC and Fox are more examples of not really so much news stations than they are opinion stations, and that's a little bit different. You're sort of agreeing to participate in those opinion-based television channels, much in the same way that you might open a newspaper and understand that you're reading editorials that are submitted to the editorial section. But bias in itself, I mean, yeah, it can be dangerous when someone clearly has an axe to grind, or someone wants to lie about a company's health or portfolio when it's exactly the opposite. I mean, those are examples of nefarious bias. But human beings are kind of subjective by nature, so it doesn't always mean that it's god awful. I mean, reviews. Think about reviews, right? Video game reviews, movie reviews, music reviews. They're obviously opinionated. It doesn't mean that they're completely devoid of value, however. So I mean, kind of take bias with a grain of salt. It's more important that we recognize that there is an angle that's being pushed, and if we can see that angle, then we can deal with it. We understand that a review has a much different purpose than a straightforward news story. So we understand that a review is okay, even if we disagree with it, even if it ticks us off that our favorite movie or our favorite video game got a bad review. We kind of understand that comes with the territory. So it's more important in terms of just recognizing that an angle exists than coming down on anything because it's not 100% objective. Okay, so some other things we check for in terms of credibility. We look at content and author. So we've already gotten into this just a little bit, right? So what does the content say? And again, not taking things just purely at face value. Even with CNN, I just described CNN as this completely vanilla, pretty much centrist news organization. But if I really want to dig beneath things, maybe not the articles itself so much, but definitely the website as a whole, you could argue it has a tiny amount of bias because, listen, it's driven to make profit. It's driven to get you clicking on articles. Someone in the chat mentioned Robin Williams and how he wasn't sure at first whether that was a hoax or whether it was true. I mean, CNN had like 3 days worth of Robin Williams coverage. Recently, it's been Joan Rivers, right? There's a reason why these people are on there for 3 straight days, because clearly there must be other things happening in the world, right? And when really big events have, like Hurricane Katrina, or many years ago, about 10 years ago, there was that tsunami in Southeast Asia. Like, these things can take up an entire week. And it's not because there's no other news going on. It's because these news organizations know that this is what's going to ultimately get ratings or get clicks and readership, which ultimately sort of increases the bottom line. Again, I'm not saying that there's anything 100% evil about it, even though it is maybe a little bit disturbing. But it's important to even recognize that those things go on. Okay, so we look at the content of the article, of the publication where it's presented, and of course who the author is. And let me give a really ugly example. And by the way, I do want to apologize in advance because we're not going to take a close look at this because it really is just kind of too ugly. But I do want to give like an extreme example of how you can easily get fooled online by first glance. Here's a site called martinlutherking.org. Now, if you just look at it, like, what does it seem? How does it strike you? I mean, what would you guess that this site is? I mean, here's a picture of Dr. King. We have different categories like historical writings, the Civil Rights Library, etc. Jordan says it seems legit. Then he says, laughing out loud. Okay, rap lyrics. That's a little bit odd. But if you don't take a super close look, you think, oh, well, it's martinlutherking.org. .org, that sounds pretty official. And it seems like it's a tribute to the man, or maybe it's a purely informational site so you can learn more. I'm not going to... Kevin says something feels... Yeah, there's something big time off, which is why we're not going to click on any of these links and actually go into them. But if we go down to see who's supporting the site, we see that it's hosted by Stormfront. Anybody know what Stormfront is? Taylor says he's heard of it. No. Well, it's a good thing you don't know what it is. I'm actually pleased. Now I'm actually disturbed. I'm sort of blaming myself here because I don't want to introduce people to something. It's not a polite organization. Okay, this is a mock Martin Luther King site where when you click on these links here, you see pretty crazy, ugly, racist, scary stuff, and yet it's clearly like the informational equivalent of like a phishing scam, right? Because there, by the way, I haven't tested it out, but I'm sure there is a sort of Martin Luther King official site, or sites that are genuine, or sites that give you solid information. But here's an organization, a racist organization, that created a site that's basically designed to lure you in. But at first glance, you think, oh, okay. It looks like it's pretty much historical. It probably has good information. Now, most of you are intelligent enough that if you actually went into the site, you'd realize pretty quickly how ugly it is. But let's say you're not so knowledgeable. Or let's say you don't quite know how to determine what's credible versus what's not. You're not able to tell that this is a pure propaganda site, and an ugly propaganda site at that. I mean, you could see that's what this site is designed to do, right? It's to lure in people who think that this must be trustworthy information, so that when they click on the different categories, they won't question the information so much. They'll accept it as sort of fact or truth, even though what's behind it is completely untrue. and downright ugly, as I said. So there's a pretty obvious example of how you have to be careful of what you find online, because there's a lot of crap out there. And again, most of you know this, and we won't be obviously looking at extreme versions of that when you do, for example, the 10 C's credibility activity. But even when you stumble across, a CNN article or what have you, I mean, really take a close look. Which is why I encourage you. You don't have to, but one fun thing to do for the 10 C's evaluation is just Google a topic that you're interested in. So if you're interested in gaming or film or music production or what have you, like see what results come up and try to pick one from some place that you haven't heard of before. Okay, because you might find some interesting things. You might find that it's biased and not necessarily biased in a good way. You might see that, oh, it looks like it's an official article, but what it's really doing is promoting a specific product. Have you guys seen examples of that online where it kind of looks like it's an article, but what it really is pushing a specific product? It's pushing a book, it's pushing a software program, it's pushing so maybe if you kind of take some chances in terms of what article you choose to look at, you can have more interesting results. Because I kind of did it not the lazy way, because I put a lot of time into it, but it was kind of easy. Just go to CNN and pick an article. If I had to do it over again, and maybe I will for next month, I would have chosen something that's perhaps more interesting to analyze. Okay, most of you guys know this, so I'm just going to fly through it. We have these different endings, right? edu.com, .gov, .org. Edu means, of course, it's associated with university or college. Um, you know, you still have to look at the information. Just because it has edu doesn't mean it's 100% credible. But you will sometimes find pretty good stuff, especially if it's like materials that are produced by professors or by the university officials themselves. You do have to be careful because sometimes students get blog space through their university, so it might end in edu. It doesn't automatically lend credibility, but at least it's something to check out. .com, as we know, is a business or commercial site. It doesn't mean that the information is bunk. I mean, the New York Times is one of the most respected newspapers in the country, and their site is a .com, nytimes.com. .gov we know is anything government related. This is great when you need like hardcore, just really like surveys, reports, statistics. I mean, you can find all this official stuff on .gov. .org, we've already seen an example. It's technically nonprofit, but you got to be careful because the .org ending in itself doesn't necessarily mean anything. The Martin Luther King site we just looked at is a .org. Okay, so you always have to look at these sites with a bit of care. And we know that there are different kind of pages that exist, right? So personal pages, special interest pages, professional pages, news or magazine pages, or commercial pages. For the 10 C's assignment, you should be sticking here, news and magazine. I don't want you examining people's blogs or commercial pages. Okay, you should find an article. Other important things is to check the date. The internet's gotten pretty good in the sense that it's pretty rare that you find something truly old, and if it is, it's usually archived as such, or it's pretty clear that it's dated. But yeah, take a look at the date on information. It's not as relevant maybe to news articles that just have come out recently, but if you're doing research on a project, let's say you're looking into, I don't know, the history of synthesizers in music. It might be interesting to find an article back from 1982 because it might help your understanding of the history. On the other hand, if you're trying to report on, for example, the use of synthesizers today, it probably isn't very valuable to go back and find something that's 10, 15, 20 years old. So be aware of when things were published. Okay, so there's my general spiel on credibility. And I go into this somewhat because all this week we're going to be dealing with credibility. So you have that TED Talk video to look at, where you have to examine, where you have to kind of respond to that video and what it says. Then you have to find an article and examine it with care. Your project for Sunday, which I'll get into in Thursday's session, is all about credibility. Actually going out there and finding quality articles to examine in terms of their content. But we'll get more into that on Thursday. But sort of the lead into that is this graded discussion for this week, which is called the Misinformation Debate. And if you kind of see the bullet points here, yeah, you've been put into three groups. Okay, and you need to communicate with your group members to organize. Um, and actually, I recommend group members getting in contact with one another like immediately. I already saw on the chat board some people exchanging information. Like if people actually go ahead and if you know what team you are, go ahead and type it in to the chat box. So this way, people who so we got two team B people. Jordan doesn't know. I think Tony didn't know as well. You can find it in two places on the main activity, the misinformation debate activity. I've posted the discussion groups. So, okay, Jordan and Tony, both of you are in this session. You're both in Team A. So we have two Team A people here. So Jordan, meet Tony. Tony, meet Jordan. Michael, you might be the only Team C person here. Okay, but here's what you're going to do. You're going to look at this statement, which, by the way, is also contained in the official instruction sheet, so don't forget to open that. Okay, it explains what you need to do. I'm going to go over it verbally, but you also have the instructions to look at as well. By the way, don't pay attention to these due dates. I, again, have shifted things around. One, because we got a late start. Two, because we're having this go-to session on Tuesday. It seems a little bit of a rush to tell people, oh, contact your team members and get this done in 2 days. So I've changed this to Friday, okay, for Team A and Team B. But here's the gist of what the teams are doing. You have this statement. It's on the instruction sheet, okay? So it's the exact same statement. Technology, so we're talking about through television, texting, Facebook posting, the internet, and you can add to that. So social media, basically, technology in all its sort of current forms. The technology has contributed to an increase in literacy skills. So what the members of Team A are going to do is they're going to assume that this statement is true. They're going to say that technology has had a great impact on literacy. You're going to say it's been super positive. It's the greatest thing ever, or okay, maybe not the greatest thing ever, but that it's had a good effect. That all these old fuddy-duddies, all these people who are saying, oh, technology is driving this society down the toilet. Kids don't know how to write today. Kids are dumb. Kids don't know how to speak anymore. Right? You're going to say that all of that is completely untrue. That actually technology has its positive side to it. So what this means is, and I'm sorry to keep going back and forth between the presentation and the assignment sheet. Tony, it's not as hard as you think. Plus, you're in. Oh, you are in Team A. I was going to say I thought you were in a different team. As you can see, Team A and Team B will work as separate teams. Okay, so Team A is going to pretend that statement is absolutely true. Team B, we have a couple Team B people here, right? I forget who they were. You're going to take the opposite stance. You're going to take the old fuddy-duddy stance. By the way, I hate to stereotype. I think there are plenty of older people who don't believe that society is going down the toilet. And I think there are young people who I'm surprised to hear sometimes complain about, oh, this generation, they don't know how to speak in anything but tech speak. Like the in the chat, the pseudo military talk Bravo company. Is there a military term for Alpha, right? When we call that Alpha company? Does Team C have a military nickname? Charlie. Okay. Wow, you guys know that. I should know that. Like as soon as you say that, I'm like, oh yeah. I've seen that in movies. I've seen that in video games, but I couldn't recall it for the life of me. Okay, so that makes me think I should have given those teams those titles on the platform. That would have been so much cooler. Okay, so Team Alpha, soldiers, you are going to support the statement that technology is great for literacy. Bravo team, you're going to argue that it's actually had a negative impact. Charlie, you're basically going to sit around for a while, which is in a one way awesome and in one way more challenging. You have to wait until you get the results from Team A and Team B, and you'll look over each team's responses and pick a winner. I shouldn't use that term winner because it's no longer PC. Everybody's a winner. But you're going to choose the team response that you're most convinced by. Okay. But notice that there's more to do here than just like get together and go, oh, Yeah, I think technology is awesome, and that's your statement. Okay, it's a little bit more complex than that. Discussion boards have been set up for each team. If you've gone into the activities, you've probably wondered why there are like four different categories for the team information debate. Um, it's simply because the first category, the one that's simply called misinformation debate, like this is the one that's officially worth 5% that I'll go into in grade, and this applies to all the teams basically, A, B, and C. But Team A, or excuse me, Alpha Team, Bravo Team, and Charlie have their own specific boards. And look, Team B, someone posted there already. This is basically your workspace. I'm going to talk in a moment how you can also utilize other tools to communicate with one another. You certainly don't have to feel pressured only to use the FSO platform, but if you like using this space to sort of organize and share information and post things, that's fine. So let's see, who posted here already? Okay, Taylor did. And when did he post this? Oh, yesterday it looks like, right? I can't see the date. What day is today? Yeah, yesterday. Okay, so look, Taylor's already on top of things. And it looks like he's already gone ahead and given his answer. Okay. Yeah, Team A, right? This is Team A? Or did I go into Team B? Oh, I'm so confused. I went into Team B? Okay. Yeah, don't say awesome because the job isn't finished. Um, Bravo team still needs to get together. They consider what they like about Taylor's statement and what they don't like. What's missing here is that we have to have some evidence or research. So if we go to the assignment sheet, you'll note that okay, discussion boards for each team have been created. Uh, in addition, teams should choose a collaboration tool to work on together. This could include Google Docs, Evernote, or what we just went over, Digo. Work together, okay, to research and prepare your case. And you have to be sure to include support. So I haven't read through Taylor's thing yet, but he just said in the chat room it's all from his head. And hey, listen, Taylor seems like a bright guy from what I've looked at already. So there's probably some good stuff there. But the other team members can contribute as well. And plus, we need this to be written not from all one person's head, but also using support. Okay, and that's what Digo, or if you want to use something else, you can use Evernote or something. But you have to include your research support, which means heading online. It means using the very skills we've just talked about, even broadly, right? Determining what's credible, what's not, what seems like it's good information, what isn't. I mean, you might stumble upon a site that's maybe not as bad as that Martin Luther King site, but there's something off about it. And if you're quoting that for part of your research, that's probably not good. So be aware of what you're reading. Jason, can I make a new list in Digo? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of why we taught you how to use Digo. Okay, it's a really convenient place to sort of keep track of your research. Okay, so here's what you need to do: timeline, Team A and Team B. So Alpha and Bravo, you're going to work with your team. Um, and I've actually gotten looser with the instructions here. You're supposed to kind of email me or send me a message, but I'm fine with you posting all of your work to your team's individual discussion board. The most important thing is I just have to get it. So if you want to email it to me and keep it private so the other teams don't see it, that's fine. If you want to send it to me as a message to the FSO system, that's fine. If you just want to post it to your team's discussion board because then it's easy for Team C to just go there, just make sure that it's absolutely clear that that's your statement. Because Team C doesn't want to go into Team A's discussion board, see 20 million different posts, see drafts of different versions of the statement, and then get confused about which one they need to look at. But here are the important things you need to include no matter what form you decide to send it to me. We need a group statement. Typically, these statements are like 2 longish paragraphs or 3 medium paragraphs. Some people go a little bit longer. Some people just have 2 solid paragraphs, but it's not like 2 sentences. Okay, consider it a mini essay of sorts, where you have 2, 3, 4 paragraphs to make your case. Um, Names of contributing team members, and I'm going to make this announcement once, and I'm going to make it pretty strongly, and then I'm going to leave it up to the teams to handle this on their own. So far, everybody, let's see if I still have the list of team members up. Yeah, here we go. I can't reveal details about individual students, but for your creative vision, the digital identity, which you handed in, which you did like last week. By the way, I'm working my way through those. Um, I'm about halfway through that assignment. Then I have to switch gears and look at your DGO assignments. I am trying to get through those quickly. But like for the digital identity assignment, like I was really impressed. Like 24 of the 25 students handed something in for that assignment, which is a really high turn-in rate. I mean, that's what I want to see in every class every month. But I don't know if I'm revealing too much, but I don't always get that. So it was nice to see. For the DGO assignment, I think there were a handful of people that I'm still waiting on. But I've tried to create groups that are pretty mixed in terms of I don't think that any specific group is going to get nailed with like oh, let me just pick a team at random and let me just mention someone who's here in the session so I'm not embarrassing someone. Okay, let's use Taylor from Team B. Like Taylor doesn't have to worry that all these people are going to be completely MIA and not doing anything for this team project. Same with all the teams. However, when it comes time to hand in your team statement, right? So let me go back to those requirements. Okay, cohesive group statement, names of contributing team members. If there are team members who aren't participating, or team members who show up at the 11th hour saying, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, I've been so busy," and it's like 10 minutes to midnight before the task closes, and they quickly post something to the board like, "Oh yeah, I think technology's awesome. Back in the day, I didn't read much, but now I read all the time on Facebook on this," and that's all they do. You do not have to feel pressured to put their name on the group statement, okay? But I'm going to leave that to you. Some people don't have the courage to do that. They start feeling pangs of guilt. They start feeling like, oh, I don't want to be the bad guy. It's only worth 5%. Let's just put their names on there. Um, you know, you should be putting only team members on that are truly contributing. That said, last month I had my first issue with this assignment that I've never had before, which is sometimes the group members weren't doing a good enough job getting in contact with their fellow group members, and so I had some really hardworking, industrious people who felt that they had been left out of the cold by their teams. It wasn't that they were slacking; they had actually tried to communicate their team members, and they so be sure that you are making a good effort to get in contact with your fellow group members. Okay, so don't just assume that, for example, I forget who the people in Team Bravo are. Don't just assume that because you two are here in the session that okay, you guys will run with it and forget about the other Team B members. Okay, try to reach out to them. But if you make that reach out more than once and you're just not getting any response or they're appearing on the board but barely, you do not have to feel pressure to put their names on the assignment. Okay? And finally, in addition, you'll have links to those articles, research, videos, etc. Sure, put them in the Digo account for your own convenience, but I'd like to see them like at the end of your statement. Like, there's your URL. Or if you want to give me the link to your Digo list, that's fine as well. But something that can get me there easily. So I'm not just like having to go hunt down your Digo list or something like that. And Team B is going to do the exact same thing. Uh, and Team C, your Team Charlie, your goal is actually it's a little bit different, but it's also kind of challenging. You're going to wait until Team A and Team B release their positions. But in some ways, you have the hardest task because when Team C doesn't take things seriously, it seems like they have the easiest goal because it seems like Team A and Team B are doing a whole heck of a lot of work, and Team C is just sitting back and judging. But you actually have to do a bit more than that. You also have to come up with a cohesive group statement and a list of team members. Um, and you're really going to take a close look at their research. Okay, you're not just going to read the statement and go, "Oh, I like Team A better," or "I like Team B better." But you're actually going to take a close look at the links, and then provide the links that were most helpful to you to make your decision. Okay, so you kind of have Team C is coming across this from a different angle, but they still have their challenges as well. In some ways, I think Team C is month to month the hardest one to grapple because sometimes they will treat it as just we just have to pick a winner and leave it at that. But it's a little bit more in depth than that. Okay, so here are some quick tips for the misinformation debate. You might want to collectively decide who will cover what in your group. If I go back to the last, Stupid thing. If I go back to the last thing, you'll see like they're even, if you want to, you could break it up in terms of like television, texting, internet, social media, right? You can like divvy up the tasks, or you can decide on some other way to kind of split up the tasks, so it's not like 6, 7 people heading off in completely opposite directions to do their own thing. I mean, you can do that, but then it puts more of a challenge to go through all that information and take the best bits and pieces from each part. Yeah, as I mentioned, use the FSO discussion board to help communicate. But in addition, feel free to use other information tools. Okay, email, instant message, Google Plus, right? Google Hangouts, Facebook, what have you. FSO is great, but it's not real time. You post to the board, and then you hope someone else comes across and sees what you've posted. So there might be, and not just might be, there are better communication tools out there that you can use. I've seen other groups set a time for people to meet at Google Hangouts. I've seen people set up individual Facebook groups for this assignment. So you guys are actually much more savvy about these things than I am. So make use of this stuff. Yeah, use computer tools, use Digo, take screenshots, right? Keep track of your research. This one I stress a lot. Choose one person, maybe two, but one person who is a strong writer and can produce the group's written statement. Grammar doesn't count a tremendous amount for this assignment, but you probably don't want to hand in your team statement with lots of punctuation errors and misspellings and fused sentences and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not sure how you'll decide it among each other. Uh, Usually, and I hate to like not pit people against you, but I hate to draw divisions. But sometimes people are pretty solid in writing kind of know that they are. I know that's terrible to say, but you might step up and volunteer if you feel like you're that person. But yeah, choose someone who can write, please, and leave enough time for other group members to reach out and respond and to read the written statements and provide feedback. Okay. So I'm glad to see Taylor jump in and kind of post a long thing there. But ideally, everybody needs to be contributing, and everybody needs to be reading what each other has done, and everybody needs to be contributing in terms of like, here's the draft. Everybody look it over, make suggestions, what could be improved, uh, and such. No, you don't have to apologize, Taylor. I'm just saying that, I don't want your other team members to get the impression that you're going to do all the work for them, and you should definitely put pressure on them to contribute to what you've already started on the discussion board. Just some real quick tips to kind of finish things off. Yeah, make sure that all those pieces are included. Again, 3 things I need from you: a written statement, 2 to 3 paragraphs, a list of contributing team members, and links to those articles, websites, videos, etc. that you used. These items need to be emailed or messaged to me, or as I said, if you want to post it to the board, that's fine too. I've kind of loosened up on that starting last month, only because in some ways it's also easier for me when it's just posted to a team's discussion board. But anyway, I just need to get it. Uh, and I need to fix this. Oops. That should read Friday. Oh, and I think I left Team C's due date the same. Let me see. Team A and B, you have until Friday at midnight, okay? Typically, this assignment is due on a Thursday at midnight. Uh, but again, I just think that an extra day doesn't hurt anybody. And it seems like, what is that? That's the rest of the day. It's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So yeah, we're talking about 3.5 days that you have to work on this. So it's not a terribly difficult assignment, but it does mean getting things organized and moving fast. And I'll scream at people in an announcement when the session is over, telling people who didn't attend the session that they should watch it as soon as possible, because if not, they'll be a little bit out of the loop in terms of what they need to do. Team C, yeah, your work is still due on Monday. Um, Again, because I think if Team A and Team B get their work in on Friday, it shouldn't take that long. If there are complications, I can always move dates around a little bit. But for now, those are the due dates. Okay, so questions. Anything at all? Anything I forgot? The class in general. Anything from last week in terms of the assignments, or what you did, or what you handed in, or what's up this week in terms of discussion board requirements, or the team debate activity. Does the team debate activity make sense to everybody? Yes? No? Okay, good. I think at its essence, it's pretty basic. It's not terribly confusing, but I know that when you get these announcements and you see all these different activities on the board, Team A, Team B, you wonder what the heck is going on. But then when it's explained, I think it's pretty basic. Wait until Thursday. Thursday's gonna be a doozy because that's another assignment that's it's not terribly difficult. It's really like the Digo assignment in that it's not that difficult, but man, does it have a lot of moving parts. And I'm going to walk people through with an example on Thursday to show what you literally need to do. Because yeah, that one's a lot of fun, but it's incredibly useful too. So we wouldn't assign it otherwise. Joseph, yeah, that threw me off. So Team C just waits. Yeah, Team C, you're like the wallflower at the prom who doesn't have a date. You're going to be hanging around by the wall waiting for some handsome boy to ask you to dance. So just hang out, enjoy the Taylor Swift songs that are playing during the prom, enjoy the Kesha songs, and eventually you'll get asked to dance. Probably Friday night at midnight. Taylor says, oh, okay, so there's a good thing. One of Team B's group members will be out of town starting on Friday. Is Friday pretty much out, Taylor? Like, is that a travel day where you're pretty much incommunicado? Taylor says he's not sure. Okay, so yeah, Team B will have to decide if Facebook is a convenient way for people to speak. That might work. But Team B members, whether you're in the room now or you're going to be watching this later when you watch the session, understand one of your team members is going to be. He kind of wants this to be wrapped up by Friday. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording for this session because it seems like most people in the chat room are just exchanging information on how they should get in touch. Let me just remind both the people who are in this session and the people who are going to watch this on their own time that you got to reach out to one another, okay? So take the initiative. Even the people who aren't in this session, I'm kind of making it sound like the people who are in this session need to be the drivers, but that's only because they've already gotten all this information, know what to do. But people who watch this after the fact, reach out to your team members. I believe that the messaging and email system from your end on FSO works just like mine, right? Can you pull down when you click on the envelope thing? Do you have the option to just click on different students' names and send them a message? I think you do. Like if I go in to write a message, I can either send out an announcement to everyone. I don't think you have that option. But if I want to send a message, I can send it to one single person, or I can choose three people among the class roster and send them information. If not, I believe you would, at the very least, have access to each other's email addresses. If you just go to the People tab at the top, I think you'll see a list of everybody's photo or everybody's non-photo. By the way, can anybody verify for me? Is that true? Can you send dedicated messages to more than one person who's in your class just by selecting their name from a list? Because that's what I see from my end as the instructor. Okay, thanks, Tony. He says he thinks so. Uh, okay, I'm going to make good on my promise and stop the recording now. And if people want to ask me more questions or continue to exchange information with one another, that's cool.